Archbishop Dominiquae Bierman has traveled the world for over 3 decades proclaiming the gospel from Zion to the nations with miracles following. She exposes the false doctrines of replacement theology and preaches restoration to the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. This is the revival of the third millennium.
Shalom, beloveds, and here we are on number 7 of this series against anti-Semitism during our 21 days of prayer and fasting against this monster that has been so wicked, that has tried to both annihilate and destroy the Jewish people, but it also has actually tried to annihilate the nations through it, because there is a key, and that key is what makes the world go round. The key that makes the world go round is actually the key of Abraham, and that's based on Genesis 12 verse 3. That's the key of Abraham. Genesis 12 verse 3 says that Elohim Yahweh, the God of Israel, will bless those who bless Abram, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 tribes and the Jewish people of today. Anyone that blesses the Jewish people of today will be blessed, and anyone that curses them will be cursed. And that's a key for either the blessing or the curse, for families, for nations, and even for individuals. So you understand that the more anti-Semitism in a nation, the more curse that there is in the nation, and the more judgment in that nation. So uprooting anti-Semitism, it's not only for the good of the Jews, it's for the good of the Gentiles. And I want to make a very big emphasis on this. This is not a romantic notion of, we're just going to be very nice and good to the Jews. This is a covenant issue, and whereabout the God of Israel has made some proclamations that are eternal, and these proclamations say clearly that he will judge seriously those that touch the apple of his eye. That's in Zechariah chapter 2. So I've been sharing some incidents that are pretty despicable that have been happening in the United States of America. I started from the month of June, I went to the month of May, but today we're going to make a little pause on those incidents, even though I may mention a couple or two, because we're going to have a very special interview with a very special lady. She is a Jew, and she is a pastor as well, and she was born in the Ukraine. And when I told her about this series, and she saw about this series, then she said that she has something to say of what anti-Semitism looked for her as a Jew in the Ukraine. I'm going to be asking her some questions so that you get enlightened that what's happening in the United States of America and maybe in other nations of the world, it's beginning to look similar to some things that happened to her in her childhood in the Ukraine, being a Jew. Now, I want to just refresh ourselves of the definition of anti-Semitism that was only coined in the 19th century. Until then, it was acceptable to hate the Jews, to be hostile, to persecute the Jews, to expel the Jews, to kill the Jews. It was not only acceptable, but encouraged throughout most of the church age from the 4th century until the 19th century. The 19th century, there was an awakening, and through that awakening, there was a definition coined, and the definition was that anti-Semitism is discrimination and or hostility against the Jews as a religious group, as a racial group, or as an ethnic group. So any one of those three, that's anti-Semitism. Now, I've added to the mix anti-Zionism, which is a type of anti-Semitism when people hate Israel, and mostly they are like pro-Palestinian, hate Israel. They think this is a social justice issue, but in past broadcasts, I have shared with you why the Palestinian cause is Hitler's child. It's the fruit of a meeting between Hitler and the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, that was Haj Amin el-Husseini, that met with Hitler in 1941, and they decided, Hitler agreed with him to raise up an army within the Holy Land, within the land of Israel, for the purpose of the executing of the final solution within the land. And anything that came out of it was the PLO, the Fatah, the Hezbollah, the Al-Qaeda, the Hamas, all of these mostly terror organizations, beloved ones, well, terror organizations really, they are the fruit of that meeting between a very cruel man, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, the biggest principality, big Muslim principality, and Hitler. And therefore I call it Hitler's child. This is a fruit of Hitler. And therefore you will see so many anti-Israel rallies, anti-Zionist rallies all over the United States of America, because the politics of this day are espousing that and have not stopped the voices coming from the party at hand, from the Democratic Party, that especially have been speaking outspokenly, like Rashida Tlaib, like Alexia Cortez and others. They've been speaking outspokenly against Israel, with hatred against Israel, and they have not been stopped. And because these voices have not been stopped, it has actually supported the fact that people can go ahead and hate the Jewish people and hate the state of Israel, and that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. So I just want you to understand that, and therefore we're going to begin to see what anti-Semitism looked even outside of the United States, in this case the Ukraine, which is very well known for quite many years of a lot of that anti-Semitism. As I said, most of it came first from the Christian church in all of its various denominations, and today there is still pockets in the Christian church, well, big pockets still. I cannot really say that the majority are Christian Zionists or lovers of Israel, to be honest with you, neither in the United States nor anywhere. The percentage is quite minute at this point. It's not a big percentage. So if you are one of them, let me just tell you that not everybody is like you. And so the best you can do is just share this video with everyone that you can, so that we can dethrone this horrendous, ugly, wicked, deathly, murderous principality in the United States of America. So let's go and see. In this 21st century, we have also Islamic anti-Semitism, especially the pro-Palestinian, anti-Zionist kind of anti-Semitism that attacks the Jews of the United States and the Jews all over the world. So let's start now with Pastor Elena. Shalom, shalom, Pastor Elena. So good to have you with us in the show today. And so we are very happy that we can host you today. And so I would like to ask you a question. And the question is like, you were born in the Ukraine, and you told me that you've experienced anti-Semitism in the Ukraine. Can you tell me about it?
Yes, I was born in Ukraine, and in the western part of Ukraine, which was very anti-Semitic. It was a well-known area. And my encounter with anti-Semitism started very early. I remember I was brought home, from the kindergarten, and I asked my grandmother, what is it, a Jew? And I was about 5 years old, that they hate us. And she was absolutely speechless. And so that was the first time when I experienced something I don't remember, but was dramatic enough that I asked this question.
What age were you? Can you repeat that again?
About 5 years old.
5 years old.
Yes.
My goodness.
I asked my grandmother, what is it a Jew? What is it? Why they don't like us? She absolutely was lost for words. She didn't know what to say.
Wow. Wow. Tell me, what did it look like for you? Like, did you have any, let's say, events that happened in your life that you can point and say, this was the behavior of the people that made me think that they hate us? Maybe you were a little bit older then, when you can remember.
Well, yes. Even in that area of childhood, maybe a little older, I remember when we walked, there were church people, mostly like elderly, they call them babushkas, they were wearing those black headpieces. And they were running from the churches screaming, the kikes, or, the Jews, if you don't know, the kikes is derogative to the Jews. They killed Jesus. And this sight was absolutely terrifying. I just clearly remember, and I will tell you something later, as a kind of like a great outcome that happened 2 years ago with the same group of people. But at that time, it was a horrible sight. And the story continues in my school years when where we have, like, for example, math teacher who terrorized, humiliated every Jewish pupil, student of that school. It was a specialized English school. And every year she would pick up a victim and she would actually intimidate, terrorize, humiliate this particular person.
And it was always a Jew.
It was, in her case, it was always a Jew. And one year there was a boy named Goldstein, and he would say, "Oh, Goldstein, if you were my son, I would have killed you." Ironically, what you speak about the curse of and the blessing of Abraham happened in her life. She cursed Jewish people, and later on, maybe much, much later, I found out that she was murdered. Nobody wished it on her, but the curse became very clear in her life. Those who bless Jewish people, I will bless. And obviously those who cursed, I will curse. And that I saw it, I know it. It was the outcome of her. She had hatred like Haman. She had irrational hatred for Jewish people. You will say, how do you know? How did they know that I'm Jewish? They're Jewish. We had passports. And though I personally never looked Jewish as far as like depiction of certain features of face, but because of that passport, even in the kindergarten, even in our buildings, people know who is a Jew, who is not. So that was dramatic.
Wow, so you had passports that defined you as a Jew?
Yes, yes.
Okay, but that's even after the Holocaust, right? After the Shoah?
Yes, absolutely. It was exactly in this Lvov. The name of the city was Lvov, and Western Ukraine.
Lvov.
Actually, it was bordering on Poland. Yeah.
Wow, that's shocking, because during the Shoah, the Holocaust, then there was passports that this was coined in Switzerland, whereabout you would plant a J on that passport, which meant Juden, and then everybody will know those are Jews. And one would have thought that after the Shoah, after the Nazi Holocaust, then those passports would have finished. But in the Ukraine, those passports continued on, and who knows in how many countries they still continued on. And so that's new to me, how it continued on in the Ukraine as well. That's shocking. And what you're sharing about the woman, the teacher, guys, this is so serious. The teacher that cursed the Jews, and everybody picked up a victim. She picked up a victim in her class that was a Jew every year, and she humiliated that victim, terrorized and intimidated, and said, they wanted them dead. She wanted them dead, and eventually she was murdered. That is, it's terrible, but that's exactly how the curse of the part of Genesis 12:3 operates. I will curse those who curse you. That's very revealing, very frightening, really. And so, tell us some more. Any other of those stories?
Yeah, definitely. One day, this particular teacher came, and she had an idea to call us, but I believe it was the whole class. I cannot tell you it was only Jews or not. All of a sudden, instead of our last name, they called us by numbers. So I was number 9 of my family name. And when I came home, I felt so uncomfortable. I shared it with my grandma. She said, "It's crazy. It's like Holocaust. It's like concentration camps." She went to school to complain. And next day, this abusive, covert, I would say, statements followed by the teacher. "Oh, here somebody sits right here, and they're too lofty, they're too high-minded to be called by numbers. They need to be called by names." And it was like on and on and on. And the error, of course, was obvious. It was me, because only my grandmother, being, indignant about that, she complained. But there was retaliation immediately.
Wow, there was a retaliation for a complaint, but did they stop calling you by numbers? That's a question.
I don't think so. I don't remember. No, actually, nothing could stop this teacher because of her lofty connections with some big, whatever her was there. So anything in her life that brought her such favor that she was actually untouchable.
Untouchable. She had connections.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I understand. Wow, that's totally shocking. I mean, this is all after the Nazi Holocaust, something that, we would have thought maybe the world learned a lesson finally after everything that happened during the time with, the horrible massacre of the Jewish people and the genocide. But apparently, the world hasn't learned the lesson well enough. And that is what I'm trying to say to all of you guys and people all over the United States and all over the world. We cannot think that anti-Semitism is a thing of the past. It was during the time of Hitler. Now we are an enlightened modern society. That monster is still alive and it needs to be absolutely uprooted, exposed to the light and uprooted. The only thing that good people need to do so that evil will continue is do nothing about it. So we cannot afford to do nothing about anti-Semitism in the United States of America. And I'm speaking this to the government of the USA, as well as to every church leader, every pastor, every person. We cannot afford it, because what happened in the Ukraine, even after the Nazi Shoah, the Nazi Holocaust, now, if you've seen my other broadcast, you've seen the incident, and you will begin to see that there's something serious going on here, especially in the college campuses, in universities, and in high schools, all the way to preschool. Pretty serious. Okay, so any other stories of the sort that you have?
Yeah, when I graduated from that school, I decided to continue my English major, and because of discrimination, I was only able to join the evening program, though it was much less great, but it was common for the Jewish people to be discriminated. And after graduation from the English department, the job doors were opened. I could be a teacher. And doors were open. I go to school and they look at me, oh, yes, such perspective. Come tomorrow, everything is open, classes are ready. I come tomorrow, bring your passport. I would bring my passport. They look at me, they look at my passport, and mysteriously, the classes were closed, the schools were burned, something very ironic, and everything was so obvious. When they looked at my passport, the doors were obviously closed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the doors closed simply because the passport said you were Jewish?
Absolutely. In this particular city, maybe, I don't remember, there was one Jewish student who could become a doctor in that particular city. Everybody had to go to Siberia or Moscow maybe, but not in that, Ukraine, Western Ukraine.
You mean if you wanted to become a doctor, you needed to go to Siberia to study?
Yeah, yes. You have to go to the University of Siberia. It was a wonderful scientific city where anti-Semitism was not in the picture. Somehow they were pure of that, and they were able to be medical students.
That's pretty interesting, because in Siberia there were many of what Russia, or the former Soviet Union called Jewish dissidents, because they tried to make aliyah or immigrate to Israel or assert themselves as a Jew in the Soviet Union society in Russia, and they would be sent, many of them, to Siberia to get to get their sentence in Siberia and be imprisoned there because it's so cold and a terrible weather. And you're saying that the only place where there wasn't anti-Semitism and they could study in the medical school, the Jews, was in Siberia. I find it very profound.
But at the same time, I have to add that it was a specific city. It was like very new. It was called Novosibirsk. It's like a new Siberia, which was not maybe a typical Siberia. It was very scientific, very young city. And somehow, fortunately, it wasn't the story of all this horror of this persecution of Jewish and Jews. And
what you're reminding me is the history in Miami, for example. I don't know if you know that, but in Miami, Florida, in the earlier years, I guess about the 30s or something like that, the Jews actually were not accepted, in the normal hospitals. So if they needed to go to a hospital, then they didn't accept neither what they called niggers or Jews, and they would actually put a sign even on the roads and say things like "No niggers or Jews allowed." That's in Miami, Florida, what happened is that the Jews then decided to, overcome this, and the way to overcome this is that they built the Mount Sinai Hospital that became the best hospital in Florida and maybe even in the United States, where the Jews were absolutely welcomed. But that kind of thing of not accepting Jews in universities or in hospitals and things like that, it was even in the United States, not in universities that I know, but in hospitals definitely, and roads were closed for the Jews as well. And so, this reminds me of that. And so technically a Jew could not really study whatever they wanted. Could they become part of, let's say, the government of Ukraine?
At that time, I don't think so.
No, probably
there
not.
There were no Jews in the government,
No, like in most of Europe. No. And so, this is very, very powerful what you're saying. If you got any other stories, go ahead, tell us.
I want to tell you an interesting story, which was as an antidote of what happened. I was really traumatized by those people, the babushkas running from churches and screaming. Those kikes, Jews, derogatory Jews, they killed our Jesus. But 2 years ago, I was on a missionary trip, and I was in the western Ukraine, in another city very near to Lvov, and the group of born-again, very grafted in people, they had Messianic congregation, and we were doing Shabbat service there. The leaders of that group were like maybe 30 years old, people who just so love the Jewish people, and they really, really love Torah, and they love everything. So all of a sudden, in the middle of the service, a group of those identical ladies come with black babushkas, and they enter the sanctuary, and I'm telling you, Archbishop, I froze. I really was terrified. I didn't know what to say and what to do. And in the middle of the worship, there was open heaven. And the leader of the service said, there's open heaven. Ask for anything you want. All of a sudden, one of those elderly ladies fell on her knees and started to scream and cry, "Oh God, please forgive us for hating the Jews."
Wow.
She said, before I ask anything, I ask you, God, please, I ask your forgiveness. And in several minutes, all those babushkas, they fell on their knees. It was just unforgettable.
Wow.
It was just unforgettable, yeah.
Wow, I got the chills just you talking about it. And
I know, I was crying. I said,
got the chills of that, and I'm praying inside as you're talking, Lord, do it again, and do it all over the United States and all over the world, wherever there are these haters of the Jewish people, whether Christians or Muslims, fall upon them and let them fall upon their knees, Abba, and let there be an awakening, a tremendous awakening in the USA like that. And you know what? I want to mention something that happened to us. You mentioned about this. They fell on their knees. They actually were running in the streets in the past, coming out of their church services and screaming, "The Jews killed Christ," and with lots of hatred. It was terrifying because many Jews have been killed throughout the years by churchgoers and people that would run after, let's say, the Easter service or the Christmas service, and they would be shouting, "The Jews killed Christ and they deserve to die." And we would think, well, maybe that is a thing of the past, but actually we attended and were part of a rally against anti-Semitism in Orlando, Florida. And that was organized by Justice for the Nations. I believe it's Lori Cardoza and other people. And we just joined that rally. We came with our shofars and we blew them there in that rally. And I remember that as the rally ended and we began to just sing and dance, praise songs and Israeli songs, and there were many Israelis among us in the audience, then all of a sudden the police just zeroed us on us, and they began to close on us, like make a cordon of police to protect us, because these hooligans came from nowhere, and they came bearing a sign that said the Jews killed Christ, because they knew this was a Christian meeting that was pro-Israel and against anti-Semitism. And therefore, they wrote there exactly the sentence that has touched most Christians throughout the generations from the 4th century and on. That has been that lie that the Jews killed Christ. And because of that lie, Jews have been killed in the name of Jesus Christ throughout the years, all the way 1,700 years from the 4th century and until now, but really especially until the Shoah, the Nazi Holocaust, where in Berlin, Hitler rose up the cross on high, and he said, you know, Juden raus, or Jews out, because you killed Christ. And of course, it was the crucified Christ there on the cross, and that's how they did it. Torquemada, during the Spanish Inquisition, raised up the cross too, and you killed Christ, so you deserve to die. And that's been going on and on and on. I still remember that I led a tourist group in Israel where Christians came to study with me about the Jewish roots of the Christian faith. And I told them about this horrendous belief that because the Jews killed Christ, then they deserve to die. And many of the Christians that were born again, spirit-filled, charismatic, prophetic, and some of them were pastors and leaders, they repented right then and there, saying that that's what they had believed. And I'm talking about not many years ago, and they were American. So this kind of theology is still within the church. And I want to tell you something about this theology, you know, and this man that raised up the sign, and the Jews killed Christ, and the police had to cover and protect all of us because of that, is that Yeshua said that no one takes his life, but that he lays it down of his own accord, and that commandment he has received from the Father to lay down and to take it back again. But besides the point, it's a lie, and it's a lie because the Jews did not have any jurisdiction under the Roman Empire to execute the death penalty, and therefore the Romans are the ones that killed Christ. Or the Messiah, actually. Yeshua, the Messiah, was killed, crucified by the Romans that nailed him to the cross. And with gusto, they plucked his beard, they put a crown of thorns, they spat upon him, they mocked him. So how come that in no church they've said the Romans killed Christ, only the Jews killed Christ? Because there was a mob that had been hired by the apostate high priest that was paid to scream, crucify him. But the truth is that the Romans nailed him to the cross. So how about this? Why no church has ever said the Romans killed Christ, they deserve to die. Only the Jews killed Christ, they deserve to die. Antisemitism, which is discrimination, hostility against the Jews as a religious group, racial or ethnic group. You can see Pastor Elena has been sharing quite horrendous stories from the Ukraine, and we are about to finish the show, so we are going to have her for the next show as well. Pastor Elena, thank you for being with us. God bless you. You have much more to say, and we'll have you on the second show as well. Shalom, shalom, everyone, and make sure you share with everyone.
To connect with us, write to info@kad-esh.org. or mail to 52 Tuscan Way, Suite 202-412, St. Augustine, Florida, 32092, USA. Or call us at 1-972-301-7087. We'd love to hear from you. And join us again next week. Shalom.